Good afternoon, and thanks for joining us. My name's Matt Stockton. I'm an agriculture economist, and I work as part of the Center of Agriculture Profitability, and I also am a director of the TAPS initiative. There are two others that are directors with me here. There's Krystle Rhoades, and she's hi, Krystle, by the way.
Hi.
She's not only she's our program director, and she does a lot of the work. And then we have also Chuck Burr. Hi, Chuck.
Hey,
How are you?
good. Hi, Matt.
It's good to see you, and thanks for joining us. We had an interesting TAPS year, and we're going to talk about that. As one of the efforts of the center, though, in effect to keep agriculture profitable and farmers doing well, they offer these webinars, and this is one of them. This session is typically held on Thursday, almost every Thursday, and you can find it on an updated schedule at the CAPS UNL website. Today, we're going to talk about the 2023 University of Nebraska-Lincoln's TAPS, or Testing Agriculture Performance Solutions, results and some of the things associated with it. Krystle is going to describe what TAPS is. If you don't know what it is, we have she's going to present that one part of her presentation, so I'll forego that. But we did have something interesting happen this year, didn't we, Chuck? We had a hail event.
Yeah, unfortunately, hail, and like many growers, across the state, deal with hail from year to year. So this was our first experience with that in the TAPS program. Right,
which is an interesting thing, which is going to alter some of the results from what we maybe expected at the beginning of the season. We're going to talk about that a little bit too. Today, we're also going to talk about some strategies and things that we think are important to think about when you talk about watering, or when you talk, irrigation, and you talk about, various parts of your decision-making process through the year. We're going to talk about profitability. We're going to talk about insurance, and we're going to talk about revenue and cost. And we're going to talk about all those things, and weather and the markets and a few other things. So we're going to do all that. So thank you for joining us. And with that, Krystle, if you will take it away.
Yes, thank you very much, Matt. So as Matt said, we're going to talk a lot about the TAPS program today. So we'll move right into it. So how TAPS works: TAPS is a real life simulation in real time. So producers actually manage real plots in the same field, and teams compete against each other, which provides them benchmarking opportunities. And it also provides them an opportunity to have a peer-to-peer network. And since everyone's farming in the same field with the same weather conditions, then the results are strictly the result of those choices that they are making through the TAPS program. So TAPS was started in 2017 with one competition at North Platte, Nebraska at West Central Research. Since then, it has grown exponentially. So in 2023, we had 7 competitions, which included 5 in Nebraska, 1 in Oklahoma, and 1 in Colorado. There were 6 states represented in the participants, including 2 overseas teams. And then there were over 200 participants within those 3 states this year. So although TAPS is a competition, the primary conceptual components of the program really focus on self-motivation, self-reliance, and learning and adaptive management capability of the competitors. We provide the peer-to-peer network, some experiential learning, and then social interaction for them. So the peer-to-peer networking is done through events and activities that we host, as well as they're able to interact with other producers, industry leaders. They share information, and then they build relationships too as they participate in TAPS with not only the other competitors, but with our technology partners and sponsors, as well as the university officials that help put it on. So these are our 2023 partners and sponsors. Without them, the program really wouldn't be what it is. So we are proud to have all of these people.
Uh-oh, I think she froze up. By the way, if you're interested in being a sponsor or want to participate in TAPS, feel free to go ahead and contact us, and Talk to us.
And Krystle has a slide advancer, so we're stuck on this slide for a little bit.
Yeah, well, her picture's also stuck. There she is. You come back,
See me now?
Krystle?
Sorry, I don't know why.
Welcome back.
There for a minute.
We told them
Okay.
stuff about the sponsors and stuff, so you can move on if you wish.
Okay, I can still hear you, so you did a great job. Okay, so our participants and our participants are given a lot of technology and services throughout the season to make their decisions. So these are just a few of the things that are provided to them throughout the year to help them make their decisions, because a lot of our participants never step foot in the field. So they are farming from a distance. So this is what makes that possible. So this year, the competitions in North Platte included a sprinkler corn competition, a SDI corn competition, and a popcorn competition. And then our sorghum competition, we moved out to Grant, Nebraska at the Stumpf International Wheat Center. So those were the four competitions, and then the simulated size for each of those competitions. As I said before, in 2023, we had over 200 participants across all of the competitions. These are the competitors for the four competitions that were facilitated at North Platte, including some out-of-state participants, as well as two overseas participants.
Krystle, can I ask you a question?
Go ahead.
So if I was a farmer or somebody that wanted to participate, how would I do that?
Yeah, so we'll talk a little bit about that at the very end, but you can go right to our website and sign up, or you can reach out to any of us that are on this call today. And we are looking for participants for 2024. So yeah, if you're interested as we go through this, feel free to reach out to us and we'll get you signed up for 2024. So some of our participants, a lot of our participants are farmers or producers from across the state. But we also do have university teams. We have Department of Natural Resources, NRD teams. We have, all sorts
Hasn't
of
there been
different.
like seed company people or seed salesmen, all kinds of people, right?
Yep, we have done a lot of different teams. You can participate individually or as a team. We have teams with up to 10 people on them. So yeah, you can get together with a group that you think will help you grow in knowledge and make the decisions as a team too. So we keep talking about the decisions. So these are the decisions that were started at 2017 for the sprinkler corn competition. These are the original 6. So they decide their crop insurance, they choose their hybrid and their seeding rate, they market their grain throughout the season, they choose their nitrogen and irrigation, timing, and amount. So those are the 6 main decisions. In SDI, we added 1, which was the insecticide decision. Then in popcorn, we actually changed them a little bit. So there's still 6, but instead of, let's see, which one?
Hybrid.
Hybrid, thank you. Instead of hybrid, we put in the fungicide application decision for them. But they
still have a choice in seed rate, right?
They chose their seeding rate, but they did not choose their hybrid. All of them had the same hybrid planted in their plots. And then in sorghum, they make the decisions for dryland and irrigated, but our irrigation system wasn't set up for variable rate. So they did not make the irrigation decisions on their irrigated plots. All of the plots were irrigated at the same rate across the field. So
maybe one day we will, we'll see.
Yep. So that was the one decision that they didn't do in sorghum. And all of this doesn't just happen for fun. So there are awards at the end of it. The most economically profitable is given a $1,500 cash award. The second award is for highest input use efficiency, and that takes into consideration the water and nitrogen intensification performance index. So you can take a look at this.
Chuck, do you want to comment on that at all?
Yeah, so basically what we're looking at here, the top part of the equation is what was the yield on your farm divided by the yield of a control plot. The control plot is in the field, but it gets no water, no nitrogen. So we're basically looking at the yield increase you got for the water and nitrogen you put on. And the bottom of part of the equation is the irrigation for your farm, your TAPS farm, divided by the crop water use of that control plot. And the other part of the bottom part of the equation is how much nitrogen you applied on your TAPS farm, divided by the amount of nitrogen taken up by the plant in that control plot.
So basically yield and differences caused by your irrigation and nitrogen are calculated and put into a ratio.
Yep, that's correct.
And in sorghum, there's no irrigation, so the irrigation component of that is dropped. And just nitrogen is taken into consideration for sorghum.
Right, and in the case of dry land, there is no
Right.
water.
Yep.
Yeah, like you said, sorry.
And then the last award we give out is for the greatest grain yield. And that award is $500, but it is a percentage of how profitable they are.
Yeah, the reason we did that, and real quickly, is we wanted to make sure that people understood there is a relationship between yield and profitability, but there's also a relationship between yield and not just revenue, but also cost.
Right. So as mentioned at the very beginning, this year was a little bit different year for us weather-wise at the field. So we did have 16.55 inches of rain, which if you look at the past 5 years, that was about average, a little over average. The new part to the weather this year was
The exciting part.
Yeah.
Surprise.
Yeah, so we got some pretty significant hail and wind damage on July 22nd to our competitions there in North Platte. So sprinkler corn, SDI corn, and popcorn. The sprinkler and SDI corn were averaging R1, R2 growth stage, and then the popcorn was just beginning VT. So it took it a little bit harder. But we were approximately 35 to 50% leaf area loss is what we estimated. So our results definitely show that this year and made a huge difference in our competition this year.
Do you have any comments, Chuck?
The only thing I would say is we've got an extension nib guide on assessing hail damage, and it would show if you have about 50% leaf loss at that growth stage, you would expect about a 20 to 30% loss in yield, and that's about what we had. So feel pretty good about what that nib guide would indicate for yield loss.
Yeah. Cool. In other words, reality and science match.
Sometimes, yeah.
That is, I like it when that happens. Okay,
And
or a theory, I'm sorry.
And then another interesting part of the competition this year was our marketing conditions. The last few years, the end of season price has been pretty good. So people had probably gotten a little too used to that. So our high this year was on June 20th at $6.28. Our marketing decisions were down this year, and probably because a lot of people decided they'd wait till that end of season and see if they could get the higher amount, and we didn't have that higher amount this year. So this was the December futures price, and 14% of the decisions were made the week of the high for the season. 21% of those decisions were post-harvest, so after they got their yields. And then 26% were sold by the TAPS team. Basically, the participants didn't do any marketing, and we sold that grain for them at the end of the season.
Which they got dinged for. In other words, it's like if I didn't sell my crop, I had to pay someone to do it for me, and there's a charge for that. So it's try to make it realistic, because in a sense, if you don't sell your crop, somebody sold it for you, it's going to cost you some money.
So I'm going to turn it over to Chuck to talk a little bit about our sorghum competition to get started.
Yeah, so Krystle mentioned we did move our sorghum competition to Grant at the Stump International Wheat Center. We did have an irrigated portion. You see there on the left 3 blocks representing 3 replications of each plot. And then on the right would be our dryland replications as well, just about a half mile away from the irrigated portion. So 18 total teams competed, which included a control plot, and then UNL had a team in there as well. Yeah, we'll go to the next slide. So this would show the nitrogen yield relationship there. You don't see much of a relationship, pretty flat line, and our R squared is not very high either. So not a strong relationship, and you can go ahead and pull the dryland up. So we had some issues in our irrigated wheat stubble that we planted into last year, not very good yields, and didn't take up a lot of nitrogen. So we had quite a bit left over both in the irrigated and dryland. That, I guess, would be one thing I'd mention to growers this year. If you're not taking soil samples this spring, it's well worth your time to do that. Take credit for what's left over from the previous year. Take that into account in your nitrogen management strategies this year. For the growers that didn't put a lot of nitrogen on, our TAPS competition did very well in terms of efficiency and profitability. Those that did put on, normally what they would normally put on didn't do very well because they didn't get much bang for their buck from the nitrogen they put on.
So it's my turn because I guess we're talking about money, right? So even though you guys talk about more important things that aren't related, okay, so are directly related. Okay, so what we have here is we have a graph, chart, sorry, where the first line is the orange. That's how much crop insurance funds that you collected. Now, there's one farm that collected, I believe it's farm 18. It collected over $100, obviously, $150 closer per acre in revenue from crop insurance. And that had a lot to do with the type of crop insurance they bought and what they did. But if you look at it, profitability, which is your blue, is basically you've got 2 farms that were profitable. It was a tough year for sorghum, and it had to do with water and available, if you were on a farm that had limited water, let's say like we did, we had limited water this year because of the well, and this is what you did. If you maybe didn't get enough rainfall enough to get that crop the way it needed to be. So your cost, which is the red line, really outperformed the green and yellow lines and caused a negative profit.
Yeah, and the well was just a huge impact for us.
Right, and had that
Went
not
down
been the
about the
case, I
20th
think
of
we would have seen a
August.
different outcome. I don't know what that would have been, but hopefully
Yeah.
more positive than it was, because 25% of your acres, which was 250 acres, was irrigated, and that would have made a huge difference.
Yeah, so it really impacted our irrigated yields. Dryland, of course, it didn't impact them, but overall profitability, a huge impact.
So
Yeah,
you
this
want to
year we
talk
had
about our winner?
we had a Triple Crown winner this year. Ron Robinson and Brandon Ripley actually were the highest yield, highest efficiency, and highest profit as well. So we have that from time to time where contestants win 2 or more categories. And they did really well this year and took home $3,500.
Chuck, you've always been telling me that there's a relationship between efficiency and profitability, and this shows up because sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes we do have double winners. In fact, the Colorado winner, which has nothing to do with this slide in this contest, their winner was both efficient and this. But the point is that there is a relationship, and efficiency has to do with cost. The efficient number of acre use of an input helps with the cost reduction, and then if you sell your crop pretty well, then you're going to do all right. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, and we, like you say, Matt, we do see that from time to time. We'll get into our popcorn competition. We're not going to spend a lot of time on popcorn today, just because probably don't have a lot of popcorn growers on our Zoom today. Number of popcorn growers compared to corn growers across the state would be a pretty low number. But we did want to share some of the results, and with all of our reports, all the results are in our report that you can pull off from our webpage. So we did have 13 teams competing, including a couple UNL plots, a control plot, and then 11 individuals there. Planted into cover crop following soybeans, was terminated on May 4th and planted not too long after that. And like our sprinkler competition, we have a Zematic VRI irrigation system. So you see a pretty strong relationship here in terms of nitrogen and yield. Not only is it pretty significant increasing relationship, but the R squared is very high. So that means the line that's drawn in there is pretty well representing the points in there. Irrigation, we saw a very similar relationship as well. Again, this was hailed. It was hailed right at VT or tassel time, which impacted our yields, I'd say 20 to 30%. So it would have been interesting to see, how much more yields we would have got for water and nitrogen that was applied.
Can I say something about those slides, Chuck?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, you notice that the red dot that you saw on those those two slides, that was the most efficient point according to our calculations. That wasn't necessarily the highest yielding, because you notice there's some dots that are above that that have more pounds per acre. So just because you're producing lots of corn doesn't necessarily mean that you're being super efficient at it.
Yeah, and some years our most efficient is very close to our greatest yield.
It
Other
is.
years it's not, and it just depends on the year. Seems like the years where irrigation is very important, like this past year was, that it tends to be a little lower for the most efficient versus the highest yield. So water is very important in those dry years. You see our yields in here range from 2,400 to 58 or almost 5,900, almost 6,000. And we were shooting for that 7,000 to 8,000 pounds per acre. I know we had some growers in the area achieve that. So the hail definitely impacted our yields. So our winner in terms of grain yield is Roger Landsman, 4,950 pounds, put on 7.7 inches of water and 170 pounds of nitrogen. In terms of efficiency, Farm 2 was our most efficient, and the color of the green dots would represent how much nitrogen they applied. So it looks like about 130 or so pounds of nitrogen. Blue dots is irrigation. That's the axis clear to the right, so a little over 6 inches of water. And that's typically what we see for our most efficient. You know, they're not really high either in terms of water applied or nitrogen applied, but enough to get pretty good yields. Most efficient went to Nate Freetag. Nate's actually a popcorn grower down by Byron. They do a lot of their own marketing of their popcorn across the country. So he was pretty excited to see he was declared the highest efficiency winner here, and took home a check for $1,500.
Yeah, that doesn't, and you should see the size of the checks. They're huge. They're, what are they, 4 foot, Krystle? Something like that.
Yep,
I want
pretty
one of
close.
them just so I can hang it on my wall. So, okay, so popcorn revenue, cost, and profit. You'll notice that the profitability for popcorn was a lot better than it was for sorghum. But you also notice that the orange bar, which is that first bar, which shows the multi-peril crop insurance payment, is huge. In fact, it was so huge that one of the producers who actually won the contest won because of his insurance policy. He bought a lot of insurance, and then he didn't put in a lot of inputs. In fact, he's going to cause us to change our rules, and we're going to modify them so that that people, if you don't follow what you should in a regular real life situation, you might find yourself not getting an indemnity payment, so that it kind of keeps you doing what you should do and making decisions. Because if you don't make decisions, I mean, anyway, long story short, there is profitability in popcorn. The cost, there isn't any, but there's only one farm, which is the control farm, right? That was the control farm, Chuck, right?
Yep,
So,
Lot 9's control.
Right. So that got no water, no fertilizer. And it shows to me that that was not a good decision. Okay.
Well, yeah, the other thing, you know, it shows you need inputs to produce yield. The other thing that's in the report that we don't have shown here is Zanger's actually collected some samples and did some popping quality of the popcorn. So, you know, expansion and kernels popped and things like that. That data is in the report, so I encourage you to check that out and get more information on that.
All right. That's all I have to say about that, because Krystle has moved on.
Yeah, so our winner was AK Acres out of Imperial, 28,000 seeds per acre, 50 pounds of nitrogen, no irrigation water applied. Yield was 2,942 pounds. Average profitability is $476 per acre.
Which was a result of the insurance payment mostly. And the fact is they had a low input cost because they didn't do anything after it hailed. And they should have, it's just one of those things. We talked to an insurance person afterwards, and they recognized that this person probably might not have gotten the payment. But the point is, our rules said they did, so we went ahead and did what we stuck to our agreement.
The other thing I might mention about when you get a hailed crop, insurance companies expect you to continue to manage that crop even though it's hailed. So you still need to, you know, make sure it's got enough water and nitrogen. So if that happens to you, would encourage you to just get a simple soil moisture sensor and put it out in the field. And then you can truly manage irrigations based on that and not just keep applying the same amount of water you normally would throughout the season. So They're going to expect you to continue to water, but yeah, just go spend 50 or $100 and get a pretty simple soil moisture sensor. And then that is your documentation of how you're continuing to manage, even though you were hailed.
Because you'd hate to not get an indemnity payment because you didn't follow through, especially after you bought insurance and had the loss.
Yep,
We
that's
certainly
right.
wouldn't want that to happen. Go ahead.
Yep. Yeah, so we're going to move on to our subsurface drip irrigated corn competition now. This is what, the 5th year for that to occur there in North Platte. We had 16 teams competing. Again, that control plot is plot 9. We had a UNL team in there as well, and about 31 individuals competing. And the system was installed several years ago by EcoDrip, so continue to appreciate their support of our TAPS program over the years. It was also planted into soybean residue.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about insurance. There's basically three types, what I would call, well, there's actually 6 types if you really love. You can either buy what they call enterprise units, or you can buy other units or optional units. And what the optional units, what we did in the contest was you have 3 plots. Each one of those plots is insured separately, and that would be the more costly type of insurance or the optional units. The enterprise units means you combine the average of all 3 for your yields and for your things. The other thing is now you have also, you can either do a yield protection policy, which is your YP. You can do a revenue protection, which basically is based on February or October prices. And I'm not going to get into it. If you don't know what I'm talking about, it's okay. There's plenty of information on the web and you can figure it out, or you can give me a call. Glad to help you. But revenue protection means that I am guaranteed a certain amount of funds. Now, there's RPHPE, which stands for revenue protection, but you have harvest price exclusions, which means that you lock in that revenue protection based on February's value. And it's much cheaper because sometimes prices go up and people want that bump in price. But we won't get into that right now. But see how the difference in variation in the amount of insurance? We had anything from 85% at yield protection to 80%, and then down as low as, well, no insurance on our control because we didn't insure it. But basically 65, 70% is the low for that particular insurance.
In terms of nitrogen applied, you see the red bars is pre-plant nitrogen, orange is side dress, and then we have 5 options for fertigation applications. Those were a maximum of 30 pounds each was the fertigation. So again, control plots, plot 9. Otherwise, our nitrogen applied range from 140 pounds to 260 pounds per acre. So pretty wide range. That it kind of surprises me every year to have that big of a range in terms of nitrogen applied, especially since, all these plots are in the same field dealing with the same residual nitrogen, same previous crop and everything, organic matter and everything else. So yeah, that's where growers can go back and take a look at their strategies and did that extra nitrogen pay off or not.
So I would remember Farm 8 and see how they do in yield when we talk about that.
So yeah, we've got our planting populations here and hybrid selection, seeding rates and cost. And to me, again, the seed or cost per acre kind of surprises me every year to have that big of a range. So some producers maybe spend more money on more expensive hybrids or higher seeding rates. Just need to be checking to make sure, there's return on that investment, or they get enough bushels to pay for that additional cost.
Ooh, I love this chart.
Yeah, so in terms of irrigation applied, a couple farms, 6 and 16, applied about 2 inches or just over 2 inches. The highest was 13 1/4 inches, so pretty big range there again, and that always kind of surprises me as well to see that big of a range. I mean, everybody's got the same information available to them. Weather station data at the edge of the field, rainfall data, they got a soil moisture probe in their plots, and yeah, we still have a pretty big range. Some of them, I'm sure they're just trying to win the efficiency awards, maybe not putting on a lot of water, but yeah, let's go into the results and see who our big winners were. So nitrogen response, grain yield response to nitrogen, not a very significant, an R squared of 0.2. That's not real high, but you can see a fairly steep line there. And of course, the red dot is the most efficient farm. Let's go ahead and pull up the irrigation response. A little bit better response there, R squared of 0.65. That just means that the equation of the line drawn in there is more representative of the points data points around it. And it's always interesting to me that, even though the most efficient farm was declared the winner, with that strong of an R squared on irrigation response, they probably could have used another inch or two of water. So even though they were the most efficient, I think they could have benefited. We saw about 4 or 5 bushels per inch of water applied response there. Yields
So Farm
range.
A did win. They put on the most water and they put on the most nitrogen.
They did, yeah, but a couple bushels less. Farm 7 was right in there, and I guess we can take a look and see how they did as well. But Lauren Disbang, what's he won now? 4 or 5 years in a row, he's been our
Right.
highest yield.
But
Yeah,
so there was like 2 or 3 different bits. Can we go back and look at how much water that Farm 7 put on and how much nitrogen? Would that be all right,
yeah,
Krystle?
that'll actually show up on the efficiency slide here in a couple slides.
Okay, never mind then. I'm sorry.
Yeah, so 10, 7, and 8 were our top 3. Yeah, so Lauren put on 260 pounds of nitrogen. See, Farm 10's right in there. They were second most efficient. They would have put on the green dots, about 185, 190 pounds of nitrogen. Irrigation water would have been about 7 inches. And 8 was the high yield, but yet the water nitrogen is pretty high there. So other participants put on quite a bit less and still had very similar yields.
I think there's like 2 or 3 bushels difference, right? And yet Farm 7 put on 220 40 pounds less of nitrogen per acre and put on less water by almost half.
Yeah, that to me is the real value of the TAPS report at the end of the year. You can go back and take a look at, what did each of these teams do? How efficient, how profitable were they, and how did they go about doing that? So our highest efficiency winner was the Rattlesnake Boys out of Wood River. They put on 140 pounds of nitrogen, just over 6 inches of water, and yields are 228. So yeah, they've been the most profitable several years in a row. Now they're the most efficient this year.
Okay, so let's talk about profitability really quick. We got a really mixed bag of opportunity here, and we even got some insurance and some with no insurance. And yields were affected enough. There's 2 things that triggered insurance this year, and I need to talk about quickly. Is there was a drop on over $1. It was like over $1.20 or something like that. Drop in the calculation of the revenue protection policy. In other words, February price was $5.88, I think, and the other price was like $4.60 something. So there's like $1.20 difference, let's say. That means that drop in value, if you have revenue protection, would kick in to increase the amount of bushels that or it would increase your revenue payment based on the number of bushels you had. So if you have less bushels that weren't triggered by yield protection, they could be triggered by a revenue protection policy. And so that's what happened. There were people that had yield protection that didn't get an indemnity, but those people that had revenue protection, a lot of them did. For example, Team 4, which I know intimately because that's the UNL team, and I was participated in that, we got an indemnity payment because of the drop in the price. Because we produced actually 200 and some bushels. I can't remember exactly what it was, but we did. So we got some revenue, and that helped our revenue. But if you look at the green line, which is your other revenue, a lot of them are above the red line without any assistance from insurance. But then some of them, like take Farm 16, without insurance, they wouldn't have made any money. So the insurance, and a lot of these people with just the red, where the red line is above the green line, they basically sold at harvest. And and so the marketing becomes really important, and it kind of shows up here in this particular graph.
So, Matt, just a quick question for growers now. The spring price this year, which I think that's getting figured this month right now.
Absolutely.
Looks like it's going to be maybe $1 lower than it was last year. So
it's going to be lower.
Yeah, how's that going to impact growers? I mean, the revenue insurance obviously is going to be a much lower lock-in price, at least a spring price. Who knows what will happen before harvest? But
that is a really good question, and I think that think about this: what happens in a normal year? 3 out of 4 years, fall price is always lower than spring price, or the February price is always higher, if you will, 3 times out of 4 than it is in October. So if you're going to get insurance and you think Because if we get a glut of corn and corn has a really good year, prices could even go down from what they are. So the crop insurance then becomes that. The other thing I've noticed with growers is they have a tendency to buy very little amounts of crop insurance. If you're going to buy a crop insurance, you want to make it as cheap as possible, yes, from a perspective of coverage. So you want maybe the enterprise units. But what you want to do is you want to have a high enough level so that you can cover your cost if something does happen. And that's what you need to think about, covering your cost, in my opinion. This is solely my opinion as a farm management guy. Because if you don't cover your cost, obviously you're going to have a loss. And with the insurance, you can cover your costs and you can do the forward marketing and take advantage of it. Krystle showed that graph of the prices, and it showed that like that June had the high price. Well, generally speaking, before July, between probably April and July is usually when you have your high price during the year, 3 out of 4 years. So that's an opportunity to forward contract or to pre-sell or to use the futures market or whatever you're going to do. And so you got a really good point there, Chuck.
So we'll go ahead with our most profitable winner this year was Jamie Balthazar and Dan Fitz, a team out of Scotts Bluff, Nebraska. The average cost was $1,070, but the profitability $491 per acre.
Yeehaw.
Yay. Okay, let's get into our sprinkler corn competition results.
This was the big contest. This is one where we had 38 farms. I don't know how many of them were competitors, but there were 38 total farms.
Yeah, 38 teams, looks like 81 individuals. So a lot of those teams had, 1 to 10 people on a team. This also was planted out into a cover crop following soybeans, which was terminated on the 4th of May, and that same BRI pivot.
Wow. And again, the insurance decision, I'm not going to spend a lot of time. I explained before what RP and all that means. But farms 10, and you might want to watch farms 10 and 29. Did they collect on insurance, and did that help their revenue is something you might want to look at. But most everybody, a lot of people, of course, these last 4 or 5 farms, 32 through 38, I think, are UNL. They're just farms that we put an insurance level on. They're for changing levels of, was it water or nitrogen, Chuck?
It was water, yeah. We'll see on the nitrogen slide here pretty quick. They all applied the same amount of nitrogen at the same time period. So it was strictly a water response on those last several teams.
Okay, but anyway, so it's kind of interesting. Anyway, I'll turn it over to Chuck then, seeing how Krystle already pressed the button.
Yeah, moving on. We're probably getting close to our time limit. So
we're doing okay, but we do got to kind of hurry.
Yeah, it looks like farm 20 would have been the low other than that control plot again, plot night. Farm 20 put on 90 pounds up to 300 pounds by farm 29. And then, like I said, you can see those last several teams all put on 195 pounds.
At exactly the same time.
Yep. Hybrid selection and seeding rate, again, kind of like what we talked about on the SDI, a pretty good range in terms of cost, what it costs to put seed in the ground, depending on what hybrid and what seeding rate you pick. That's not near as exciting as water and nitrogen, so I'll move on to the water. Not as exciting for me, I should say.
Okay, so, hold on to your hats, folks. Here we go. We got water.
We got water. Yeah, a couple teams put on no water, up to 13.67, so a little bit higher than the SDI, but we definitely needed some water during the growing season. And yeah, we'll take a look at the response functions here in a little bit.
That's similar to the water on the SDI, wasn't it? Because it wasn't like 13 inches was the high there. Some 13 point something. I don't remember.
Yeah,
but
I
anyway,
think it was within an inch or so. And they're usually fairly close between those two. So we'll get into
applied in a different way.
Yep. Get in the response here. Again, nitrogen, not much of a response in R-squared of 0.16. So the most efficient farm, is not too far off the top yield there. Maybe if not too many bushels there. Then the water response, again, in dry years, we just see a very strong relationship there with water and yield. And
this is a quadratic as well, so it's got a. In other words, you're beginning to see that point where you're not going to get much out of it.
Yeah. And again, with that strong of a relationship, our winner and the most efficient maybe could have put on another inch or two and had a response for that. In terms of yields, our top yield was 212. Typically we're in that 170 to 190 range on the top end, lower end 125. So pretty big yield. range there from low to high. We had a few teams that were lower than a control plot. I'm not sure how that worked out. Maybe the hybrid they selected or their seeding rate or something. But greatest yield, a winner went to Tom Carpenter down in Bartley, Nebraska. Tom put a channel hybrid out there, 214.78, 265 pounds of nitrogen and just under 12 inches of water for 212.2 bushels per acre.
He for looking at the contest relative to some of the others, he put up quite a bit of nitrogen and quite a bit of water on, didn't he?
Yeah, he probably could have cut back, I would say, maybe an inch or two on the water and I don't know, maybe 30, 40 pounds less nitrogen. And I think his yields would have been right there, right where they're at.
Okay.
The other thing to mention with the hail, of course, everybody's planning for much higher yield. So we're looking in retrospect. That's, I guess, one advantage to spreading your nitrogen application out as we go through the season so that it's not all loaded up front, then you get hailed out. I mean, there's just extra nitrogen sitting there that we can't make use of.
Okay, so what farm number was he? Tom, the winner? I'm just curious.
Yeah, let's go back one slide, Krystle. Or two slides, I guess. 12.
So he's farm 12. So I wanted to look at him on the efficiency chart.
Yeah, so he was in the top 3 in efficiency there, ended up 3rd. Top efficiency was farm 18. And the height of the bar, that's just, that's our efficiency factor. A higher number is better. Looks like 150 pounds of nitrogen and about 8 inches of water to our most efficient farm. And that was the Perkins Group out of Grant, Nebraska. And they've done very well in the profitability sprinkler competition over the years. And I think this is the first year they've actually won the efficiency. So 150 pounds of nitrogen and 8 inches of water.
Yeah, and they got
bushels.
only 7 bushels less.
Yeah, so a lot less nitrogen than our yield winner, quite a bit less water and give up 7 bushels. So that's why they're the efficiency winners.
Oh man, look at all these lines. I don't know if I can understand them. I guess let's get an economist in here to figure this out.
Yeah,
okay.
We've only got 10 minutes to finish up. So
I think we're good. This is the last contest, right? I will. Oh, come on, Chuck. You ought to know.
Don't get too excited with all the lines and numbers. So.
Okay, I won't. I'll try to keep it short. I'll keep it down to about 15 minutes. Okay, so oh, wait a minute. We only have 10 left. Okay, so here we go. If you look at this, you actually got the SDI contest actually had about a 50-50 mix. This does not have a 50-50 mix of making profit. And for whatever reason, I think there is quite a bit of, like, for example, if you look at farm, I believe it's 10, he's got quite a bit of indemnity payments. I mean, he's almost got like $500 an acre in indemnity payments. I mean, that's quite a bit, in that orange line. Whereas, and yet there are some that got very little, if any, like farm 38, which is one of the UNL farms. We didn't buy that much insurance, and our yields were good enough that we didn't get anything for it. So, but looking at this, what you really want to be looking at is what is the relationship on my farm relative, and this shows you a wide range of when people make decisions, how it can affect that relationship of cost, revenue, and profitability, because it's a relationship between yield pushes revenue, doesn't it? The way it pushes revenue is the more yield you have, more bushels you have to sell, the more revenue you're going to have. Well, that's where marketing comes in handy, that if you can market stuff, you can actually get something out of it. So 23 is our winner. And why is he our winner? Well, if you're looking at the difference between, he has some insurance payments or indemnity. He's got quite a bit of value in what he sold. He wasn't the highest yielding farm by any means, right? Because we decided that was another farm. We talked about that, right? Or am I getting it mixed up with SDI? Anyway, we're going to look at this. He's got quite a bit, and it comes from the fact that he was able to sell at a pretty good price, but he's also got a decent yield, and he's also got insurance payments so that his marketing went all right. So he all around, he did pretty good. And that's the key is he got decent yields. He was decent in his water allocations and his fertilizer, keeping his cost down. He got some decent yields from it, but he also almost got $6 a bushel for his corn, where some other people are like a lot less, they're 540, 560, and even lower. So that's the way that it worked. And so his average cost and his cost breaker, and that's what makes a winner. And that's what you want to do on your farm is you want to balance your productivity with your cost, and your cost with your, that productivity then translates into marketing, and marketing into getting as much as you can for what you produce. And that's what helps your profitability.
Yeah, so congratulations to Kenny Ranke. I think this was Kenny's first year competing, so he did a nice job competing his first year. The other thing I might mention is I think we were hailed a little bit more on the sprinkler corn versus the subsurface drip. So yields may be a little bit lower in the sprinkler compared to what it was in the SDI.
I do know there's a difference in the fields anyway, isn't there? Because usually the drip is about 20 bushels higher than but it was even more this year. I get it.
Yep, definitely a more organic matter, a little better soil type there in the SDI, but yeah, a little more hail this year in the sprinkler. So turn it back over to Krystle to talk about what's coming up for 2024.
She's going to take it home for us. Thank you, Krystle.
Yep, thank you guys for all the results. And I will conclude that part by saying if you want more information on the results, the full report is available on our website. So it's taps.unl.edu. And then you just click on the reports tab and all of our past reports are there. And if you want a hard copy of those, reach out to us. We'd be glad to put one in the mail to you as well. So what's coming up for 2024? We have another exciting year right around the corner here. So our current programs, like we've talked, we have our 4 competitions in Nebraska or in North Platte, and then we also have a winter wheat competition out in Sydney. The CSU program has their corn competition, and then we also, Oklahoma State has a competition down in their neck of the woods. So in 2024, we're excited to add soybeans, which will be held at NREC at Meade. And then Kansas State is jumping aboard with us, and they are going to have a corn and sorghum contest down around Colby, Kansas. We are finalizing our soybean decisions and soybean competitions. So if you have any ideas or interests in the soybean world of what you think that competition might include as far as decisions, reach out to Chuck or I. We're still in the final phases of getting that one planned. So
you could also talk to me, even though I am chopped liver, apparently.
And then 2025, Texas will be coming aboard. So all of this is thanks in part due to a technical agreement that we got through the Natural Resource Conservation Service this year, which is a 5-year technical agreement. And we'll work with the 5 states to keep the TAPS program going and start up new competitions across that 5-state region. And then as we talked a little bit at the very beginning, how can you be involved? So we're always looking for participants to join the competitions, but space is limited just because of field size. So it's kind of first come, first serve. So definitely reach out to us if you are wanting to get involved as a participant. We are also always looking for partners and sponsors to keep our program going. If you have a technology, if you're a startup company, any of that, we would be glad to sit down and talk to you about the opportunities that the program offers and see how your vision fits with ours. So definitely reach out to us. taps@unl.edu is the best email address, or go to our website and you can find a lot of information there as well.
Is that it, Krystle?
That's it. So with that, we just want to say thank you. Make sure to follow along with the program, even if you don't participate. We have a lot of people that read our reports and listen to these presentations and get a lot out of them. So follow the program and see what you can learn from these participants that we have each year. We have Facebook, Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it, and then YouTube and our website. So there's also
sorry, go ahead. Sorry.
Nope, you're fine. There's also a digital newsletter that we put out throughout the year. It goes out once at the end of the month, each month. And then during the growing season, we put out a technology newsletter. So you can subscribe to that on our website as well.
I honestly believe there are 4 types of people in this world. There are those people that participate in TAPS, meaning the participants. There's those people that put it on. That would be us. There's those people that support it. Technology companies, And then there's the one group that's probably our largest group, and that's called the followers. These are people that follow the results, look at the things, and look at the information that's created from the TAPS program. If you don't want to participate, that's fine, but then follow along, and you can subscribe to the newsletter, and you can do some things that can help you, and you're more than welcome to contact us. And even though you live far away, we would love to have you get in contact with us and become part of TAPS. TAPS is an amazing program. I will tell you, the reason it's limited somewhat is because of its nature, that it's very costly to actually go out and farm little fields and make all the little decisions that are made by the individuals. It's not just a virtual simulation, it's an actual simulation where we're actually growing the crop. So the results, we don't make them up, we don't invent them. They're a result of your decisions and the conditions under which you made those decisions. And that's the value of TAPS. We'd like to thank Chuck, do you have anything you want to say?
Yeah, the only thing I guess I would have mentioned, Krystle talked about some people following us, and I've run into a couple of people over the last 2 years that have never been to any of our banquets or meetings or tours or anything, but they read the report and they've actually made changes on their operation. So if you're somebody that has followed TAPS in the past and made some changes, we would love to hear from you. Get a hold of Krystle or I or Matt, and let us know how TAPS has benefited you, and we can share that with others that are helping support the program and build and expand TAPS.
I also would be redundant if I failed to say that we also have another executive director, and his name is Chris Proctor. He's in the eastern part of the state. He works for the university, and he's just a brand new, spanking new, if you want to call it that. Well, spanking, I don't know if that's the right word. But anyway, he's new, and we're glad to have him aboard as one of the executive directors of the program here in Nebraska. With that, I would like to thank you again for joining today's webinar. We look forward to look for the recording later this afternoon in the archive section of the CAP site, or the Center for Ag Profitability site. I don't know, Krystle, if you're going to probably make a link to that on our site, but it'll probably be available there. And anything else. With that, I would like to thank each and every one of you for attending, and tell your friends that if they want to get an exciting time, they need to become part of TAPS. Thank you.